Selectmen, if everybody would rise. Pledge allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I apologize for the brief delay here this evening, but any announcements from anyone from the board? I just want to remind everybody to continue to recycle if you are a recycler, and if not, we'd appreciate it if you started recycling.
There'll be a lot of people enjoying, I think, the basketball tournament tonight that may not be viewing, part of our viewing audience, because there's a tournament going on.
Oh yes, we will have to end on time because American Idol is on tonight, so that takes precedence over. Okay, we have an appointment at 6 p.m. here, and this is accordance with the schedule that we established earlier in the year. Finance Committee has had the Selectmen's budget for a month, maybe, thereabouts. And so I'm going to ask Finance Committee to, how you want to do this, but we can just brief. Yeah, I think it's really just kind of briefly. I think we will have to all sit and.
We'll touch on pretty much what we.
Yep.
Yeah, but I added some more. Oh, but I guess we can go on that one if I can. All right. I'm not sure. This is what's up on the board. That's not page one, is it?
Oh.
Yeah, there you go.
And just,
Initially, what we looked at were salaries, and we were not.
you have to. Somebody's got to come to the microphone.
We had initially looked at the salaries, in which we were not in favor of the 2% increase that the Selectmen had put in.
Yep.
It would appear that the request was the same as last year's, but the board put in a 2% increase, if I'm understanding correctly. So that would also affect the retirement. It would affect the taxes. Actually, gotta go further down. The insurance, the FICA, the Medicare, the workers' comp, the unemployment, all of that, it would affect, without the 2%, it would be decreased, although it's not represented in this, but it would obviously reduce what our FICA tax would be and our Medicare tax would be if we didn't include the 2% increase.
Are we responding to a rationale, or is that for another meeting?
We can do that now if you'd like.
All right.
If you have any questions or.
Just, the rationale behind the 2% was not that there was going to be a 2% raise for people. It was put in there as a placeholder for collective bargaining, because the town has to bargain in good faith, and it gave some room for maneuvers. It wasn't to say that, okay, they will get a 2% raise. It might have been that they got 0%, or it might have meant 1%. All that figure was in there was just to have something for the negotiating table.
We
That's
did
it.
ask that question. Diane asked that question, and we were told that this had nothing to do with the negotiation.
Well, it can't be. We don't
Yeah.
predetermine what we're going to negotiate,
Right.
right? But there was funds from, and when we looked at it from a total salary perspective, the number was a plug number to say we could have up to a 2% increase across the board.
But that's not how it was presented to Diane when Diane asked that question.
Understand what you guys have done, that's fine. I mean, you're coming back saying no salary increases, that's, I think that's the message that,
Yeah.
you know, one way or the other, we would have accepted. If we said, yeah, we think, you know, there's an opportunity, you should move forward. If not, then.
I mean, in an ideal world, I think it would be wonderful to be able to give everybody a salary increase or some type of merit increase. But unfortunately, based on what we're looking at for an increase in our taxes, I don't think now is the time. And then we can go down, the next one was the IT on page 2. They had put in a request under consultation and training, I guess, of $6,000. The board jumped it.
Consultation, software, training, et
Yeah.
cetera, yeah.
The request was 6,000, the board jumped it to 8,
Yep,
and we said, no, leave it at what was requested at 6.
okay.
That was the initial
page you on
request.
now?
2.
2.
Okay.
And then when you go to the town clerk, again, that has to do with the salary.
Yep,
The election expense, we went back, I believe I looked at our expense revenues for what was spent in election expenses last year. If I can find it. And we were well within the $7,500 budget from a few years ago,
okay.
which is
Just
why
understand there's primary elections in June, gubernatorial election in November,
Right.
so not an apples to apples on.
Oh, the November election is typically the more expensive election, which is the one we already have in our expense revenue. The June election doesn't usually cost
June
as
is
much.
in this calendar, this
It's in this fiscal year, right.
Right. So
Right.
the real impact would be the gubernatorial election.
Right. And it's not a presidential election next year, so that's why we feel that
Okay,
that can stay at 7,500. Page 3, again, we're looking at salaries,
yep,
and then we looked at travel, and we compared the travel last year, on last year's budget, what was spent versus what was allocated last year, and we think that the $800 budget would be sufficient.
okay.
And that's on page 3. I don't know if we're all still on the same page.
Midway
You all
down.
set with that?
Midway down, yep, okay.
Page 4. Fencing the 2 generators and the air conditioner. If I remember correctly, Dave, that was a comment that $3,000 seemed a bit excessive without getting estimates. I mean, it's not that big of an area. I mean, I fenced in a whole pool for less than that, and we're just fencing in a generator. There's not that much area to be fenced.
2 generators.
Yeah, well, okay, my pool's a little bigger than the 2 generators, but nonetheless, that's where we came up with the $1,500 for that. Taking out the energy audit and the LED sign, I mean, that's more, to me, of a want than a need. I believe we all concurred on the Finance Committee for that. The tax assessment, again, that has to do with the salaries. Page 5, again, it's salaries. It's all salaries on page 5. Page 6, we reduced the heating fuel. I gotta copy my line here. Heating fuel under the library. I looked at what was spent last year on this current expense revenue report. Oops. And calculated that $4,000 would be more than enough for fuel for the library, considering the work that's been done. We've done that hidden bathroom, I guess you can call it, the 2-holer there, that's all been, that hopefully would save us some money. The Parks and Rec, we weren't in favor of the substantial increase in salary for that. Or, well, I take that back. It was a 3-to-1 vote. 3 people were for bringing the salary up to $40,000. 1 person was leaving it back at last year's appropriated salary.
So the recommendation would be 40?
The recommendation, the majority recommendation
Yep.
is 40, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
The retirement, again, that would just go with the
Yep.
recommendation of the majority of the board again on that one. Page 7, under Parks and Rec Professional Development, we think 500 would be more than enough, based on what was spent year-to-date on the expense revenue report we have. Program expenses, the majority of the board voted for the Board of Selectmen's budget. 1 person voted for what was requested, which was $90,100. Now, why did the board jump that one? $107,000, I mean, $17,000. That had to do with that part-time person, right?
There was originally a request that would have taken the money out of programs and put it into an assistant
An assistant, yeah, and they just moved it into
position.
here.
We took the 17.5 out, which was up on page 6, down at the bottom. So the 17.5, as you can see, we recommended 0, but we
Right.
adjusted the program revenue up by that amount because that person is in that program revenue line item now.
I'm surprised that wouldn't be put into a salary line, but, I mean, who am I to
Well,
decide?
there was a request to create a position instead of we hire folks that come out of the program development. It is salary, right?
Well, it is a
but it's-
salary, but it's coming across as an expense, which is one
Right.
and the same, but it's a
Well,
totally
if you didn't have a
different
program,
line.
you wouldn't have a
Right.
person. So that's
It's all
really
in
the
a
rationale.
line.
It was more of a per diem or on
Right.
an as-need basis, so we
Yeah.
wouldn't have to pay insurances and the retirements and all that. We didn't
But
want- we didn't
that
want
was,
to add
that
another
was a
position.
that's why our recommendation was at the 107 versus the 90.
Right. You
Because
just
the-
moved it
the-
from one line
Right,
to
because the
another.
90 request was for a
Right, with the
position.
17.5, right. You just moved it from one line to another. So the majority of the board voted with the selectmen on that one. The planning board, just again, the salaries, which also affected the retirement. On page 8, salaries again. Equipment maintenance. On the fire department.
Okay?
You might have to help me out on this one, David.
Well, you got no change here.
There was no change,
Okay.
but there was a change. Oh, and it was on the equipment, right? We zeroed out the equipment. If you look a little bit further down, the request was for $15,650. We took that out, and we left the equipment maintenance, because a lot of the equipment that was listed in the breakdown that was provided to us was maintenance and repair.
It's kind of like, it appeared to us it was showing up, almost showing up in two different, the same thing was showing up in two different lines, is how we interpret it.
Okay? All right.
So we left the equipment maintenance, initially our vote was to reduce that amount, right, David, Diane? The amount, initially our recommendation was to reduce the equipment maintenance, and then we saw the duplication, or what appears to be a duplication of expenses on that other line, so we zeroed out the 15.6 line and just left the recommendation alone on the equipment maintenance line. Public safety EMS, page 9, the Hep B shots and testing, the budget was for $4,000 based on what was spent this year. If you average out, they've spent $1,850 out of their $4,000 budget, which is equivalent to about $2,800 for a year. So our recommendation was to do $3,000. That gives them a $200 buffer. If you follow me on that one. The same holds true for the station supplies. When we did the supplies, if you averaged out based on the expense revenue out of the budget last year, they used $29.90 out of a $7,800 budget. So that is equivalent to a $4,500 budget this year, so we think $5,000 will be more than enough for a budget this year versus the $8,000 requested. Port account fit tester, we put that it's included in their equipment replacement. I think that was another duplicate, what appeared to be a duplicate of numbers. The car payment, the majority of the board voted no on the command vehicle, or whatever we're calling it. One person said to leave it as is, but the majority of the board said 0. Page 10, again, it just has to do with salaries, no 2% increase. Other than that, we were all in agreement. Page 11, The road commissioner, we were leaving that at the requested amount of $23,536 based on the board. The board wanted to put another $100 more. I don't know why. Do you remember why you increased that one $100?
Not now.
But in any event, we recommended what was requested by the road commissioner. Ditching program, the commissioner asked for $30,000, the board recommended $20,000. We think it should be $30,000, so we think that should be jumped back up to $30,000. Ditching is imperative for our roads. The engineer study on the roads, this was a majority vote. This was not a unanimous vote by the finance committee, but we went with the $25,000 board recommendation. The additional ditching, we pretty much moved the line like you guys did on that other line we talked about. We gave an extra $10,000 in the ditching program and reduced the additional ditching by the $10,000, so 60 to 50. Do you follow me so far?
Yep.
The police contract, the majority of the board had the selectmen's recommendation. One person did not. Then when we go to page 13, under the capital improvements, it was a unanimous vote not to the transfer. Yes? Unclassified.
On page 12, halfway down.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see anything under the notes, thank you. Unclassified, which is the charitable contributions that you make, the whole board, the unanimous vote of no contributions this year to any charitable organization. Sorry, I was looking at the notes on the side, sorry about that. Then when we go to the capital improvement programs, the transfer station, it was a unanimous vote of nothing. The restoration of historical data, the majority of the board felt that we should invest something, so we plugged a number of $5,000 in there to restore what we could for $5,000. The fire department study, the recommendation was $0, and the transfer station committee, a unanimous vote that that should happen. And then in addition to that, I had done a little bit more homework, and if you want to plug away a few extra $100, I found another couple savings, but it had nothing to do with the board, and this is something I did on my own time, I didn't do it with the board, but I was able to shave probably another $10,000 to $12,000 off that budget, based on the expense revenue report.
Okay,
And that's all I
so the
have.
bottom line is 117,309.11, less than what the board recommended. Okay,
117, is that what you come up with, Diane?
that's what the spreadsheet says.
Yeah, 117,000. Yeah.
All right, I'm sure we will probably set something up to, we're going to have to go through and take a look at what the recommendations were and either decide to, the board will decide to stay pat with what we have or move to what you have. But I think it might be good that we all sit together and one more time and go through the kind of the rationale, and we can go back and forth, but
One more time, we didn't meet at all on this.
no.
I think,
I mean, the board
With
to sit
us.
with you,
Okay.
okay? And at least kind of exchange in a workshop. You know, I mean, Cindy is listening to some of this tonight, but the five of us and the full board, if we can get from the finance committee, would be nice that the 9 or 10 of us, counting Nancy, all sit on 11, counting secretary as well.
I think where there is significant differences in maybe the program director too, so that we can hear one last presentation there on where there's differences.
And
Other
the
than that,
only,
we don't need to have all the program people in because there's not significant differences in all the programs, but a couple of them that may be, we probably should have that person in with them.
my only other concern, our only other concern would be getting the actual written warrant article so that we can make a recommendation on the actual written article.
Yep.
We struggled something terrible with that last year, and we're hoping that that doesn't duplicate again this year. So if you can even toss a date out there when you think we might have the actual written article. We're meeting again April 12th, and I understand the warrant has to be done, printed. Is it only 7 days before town meeting that has to be done,
The
or?
warrant closes 30 days before town meeting.
And it takes
So-
how long to print? So we want to make sure we have time to read these warrants, make a recommendation, and get them to you folks.
And I think we
To get
said
it
that
printed.
sometime, I think when we worked this out, right towards the end of this month or the first week of April, we would have everything kind of congealed together and say, because, I mean, ultimately, we'd like to move with the town report in at least a draft of the warrant. The warrant will not close until May 12th, okay? And it will not be officially printed until after that date. But that's the date that it closes, and the signatures are on it, and that's what will be presented.
But we have your word that we will be able to make a recommendation on the actual written,
we-
how it's going to be written.
How the warrant's going to be written, not how the warrant will be written. You will have an opportunity to say, this is the Finance Committee's recommendation based on how that's written.
But we'll see how it's
Yeah,
written.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought you wanted
Yeah.
to negotiate on how
No,
it's
no,
written.
no, I just want to make sure we see exactly
ain't
how it's written, so that what we're actually making a recommendation on is indeed,
Yep.
because some numbers got moved around. I mean, we made recommendations last year, and then some numbers got moved around, and it gave the impression that we recommended something when we didn't.
Okay.
I mean, theoretically, I mean, what we'll do is we'll have that, you'll get that warrant, you'll have a chance to see it, and theoretically, it could change 30 days before, and the thing that should happen is if for some reason something came up and there was a significant change, you'd be
We would have the
notified.
opportunity to make a recommendation, hopefully.
That would be the intent.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would certainly be
Fabulous.
the intent.
Good, beautiful. Thank you very much.
Okay? Thank you, folks. Appreciate the time and effort. We know from experience it's not easy, and
Yeah.
it still won't be finalized until we can scrub it two more times, so.
It's evident that the Finance Committee took due diligence for this and really worked on this hard.
Yep.
I think they need to be commended for that.
Yeah, we may have some differences in opinions on certain things, but again, I thought, nice, good job.
Well, Diane did just bring showed me the actual email we got back. Contrary to Gordon, what you were saying about the 2% increase, it was in the memo to us that was indeed a 2% increase.
Well, you're right.
So that's
Yeah, I mean,
where we were going at.
Black
with
and
the
white,
2%.
you're right. I mean, it's right, but it was a put that we plugged into every line item specifically to,
It didn't come across as a negotiation thing, that we're putting this in as a buffer for negotiations. It just says budget is with a 2% increase.
yep.
Because we were asking if it was a buffer.
We discussed it both ways, and we went with the 2%, but that doesn't mean, I mean, I think it's healthy to have a difference of opinion here.
All right, beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Okay, anything else on the Finance Committee? Frank, you got enough pitches? You all set with pitches? Okay. All right, hearing a delegation. Correspondence, we got a couple of correspondence that we've got here that the board kind of should go through. I think one of them was the packet last week, and I'm not sure that everybody got a physical copy of that, but that was the abatement request. If you don't have a physical copy of that, you need a physical copy of that because you need to go through the rationale that was given for the request.
Is there anybody out there that doesn't have a copy of the agenda? Because for some reason, I have probably like 20 copies of it. You, sir? Okay. I don't know why I got that many copies.
So, can we scan this thing and get a copy to Cindy of the abatement? of the letter that came in for the abatement?
Yes.
And I think there were more than enough copies to go around, right? I mean, there were like 4 or 5 different packets from their lawyer.
Yeah,
No.
I can either scan it or
Okay,
mail it to her.
all right. The other memos are from the planning board, one on the budget. They had anticipated meeting with the board and the finance committee. We did not have that meeting because we in essence recommended what they submitted. I think you did likewise, so we will respond to the planning board with regard to that. And the other one was on video records. Evidently, was an issue with recording part of a thing, so just so that you are aware that those are in the packet. Moving on, town administrator's report.
The only thing I have is, on Friday, it's the deadline for the pre-qualifications for the insurance bids and the market allocations.
Okay? So that's this Friday. Anything else, Nancy?
That's all I have.
Selectmen's report.
I think it's appropriate to maybe hear from our school board. Gordon and I went to to listen to the superintendent and business manager talk about the budget as it stands at this point in finance committee. I think we can get more information on that.
Okay.
But did you have anything?
Yeah, going to show you a clip. There it goes.
So this is what was covered last night?
Yes. I don't know if this is what you need me presenting, or...
Not specifically.
Okay. What does it say here?
I think these are the same formats that we presented, what, a month ago?
The figures here are a little bit different. This was a meeting that John and I attended for the 6-town R.S.U. 57 meeting on March 8th. The top figure where it says status quo, if the school were to maintain the status quo right now, it would require a 5.79% increase or to the school budget, which would amount to 24.43% increase in local taxation. What the school board is, we were told anyway, is going to try to go forward with is a 1.5% increase to the school budget, which translates into a 16.35. The other one we have was 16.23% increase, which means that the superintendent is going to make $1,452,500 in cuts to, and we were told those would be cuts across the board, so it would include clerical, ed techs, teachers, administrators. According to what the superintendent told us, there would be no area within the school budget that would be left untouched. You can see the percentages, if you get down, what the impact would be. Recently, maybe you heard in the news that the state had miraculously found some money. Well, that didn't translate very well for M.R.S.A because we only received $200,000 of that. So the 2.2 million deficit is now at 2 million. So we're still, not looking very favorably. A couple of other things that came out of this was, there's a bill before the legislature, LD 551, it has to do with the EPS, and they would like everybody supporting contacting their legislators to get this passed. This was brought to our attention by Representative Joe Wagner, and this would have a significant positive impact on the local school budget. He didn't get into a whole lot of detail about it, but I think anybody can probably go online and look it up, see what those provisions of that are. The other interesting thing that we found is the school budget will be voted on the same day as the primaries. There will not be a separate voting day. So the voter turnout should be significantly more because of the primaries and the referendums that are going to be taking place. And I believe that's...
Same day that there will be municipal elections on that day, isn't it?
Yeah, so, yes.
Do we have the breakdown for the town of Waterboro as far as
Yes.
how
Yes,
we do?
yeah, we've got a, I don't have,
Is there a slide that shows Waterboro?
How you feeling?
How am I feeling?
Yeah.
Why am I gonna faint? Should somebody, he's here.
The Essential Programs and Services EPS model, I think that one of the things they're talking about is in the legislature that we should call about, and that's that we had been kind of inadvertently, according to the analysis of our superintendent and business manager, put into the market of Sanford when we really fit in the Biddeford market, and it goes along with South Portland. And with that, with us being in that market, we would get a greater subsidy from the state. It was brought up several times, and I think Lisa will probably talk about this too, that M.R.S.A. D57 is down near the bottom in the state as far as the amount of cost per student in educating our students. We have been very diligent over the past, especially 4 or 5 years, in keeping costs down. And what the state formula has done, and what the state has done, is taken the second most amount out of our away from us, from what I understand, next to Brunswick. And so here's a district that is actually spending less, that is getting a greater reduction from the state. So we're getting really hammered here.
So, to Tina's question,
I'm sorry, I
these
heard
are,
something John said after I saw this.
this is somewhat dated, but roughly about the same. I think the 1.5 is now a 16, your chart's at 16.35%.
right.
The way that breaks down, it's a 17.5% increase to local taxes in Waterboro.
These are the figures as of the first meeting that we went to.
Right. And some of that's changed, and I'm sure that'll still change. We don't, I know the school board has got their hands full with trying to put this together, and certainly their efforts are
These figures here,
aren't any easier this year than probably worse this year than they were last year, to be perfectly honest with you.
these figures will be slightly lower because of the adjustments that the school has made. The other thing that they did mention is they are in negotiation right now with the teachers, that a plan has been, I guess, ironed out, but it hasn't been finalized from a school board vote, so we really can't say much about it because it's not public type knowledge right now.
I can touch on it.
You'll be able to touch on, okay, good. It's better in your purview anyway.
So we don't need to steal any more of Lisa's thunder, right? So it is, this week, we do have Lisa Faith is here to represent the R.S.U. 57 directors from the town of Waterboro. So, Lisa, we won't throw anything.
Oh,
We'll throw it.
Well, I'm little, you'll probably miss me anyhow, so.
We appreciate everything that you folks do down there,
Well, I will touch on...
because it's not easy.
Yeah, I'll touch on the finance portion of it first, since we've already been discussing that. It is still very fluid. The superintendent and the business manager continue to meet with representatives from the 6 towns, and we certainly appreciate your attendance there. I know the superintendent and the business manager very much appreciate it, because they appreciate the feedback that they're getting. It does make their job a little bit easier to have some boundaries and guidelines from the members of the town boards as well. The financial picture continues to be bleak. There's no other way around that. The estimate of $200,000 from that 20 million found money is pretty accurate. We're not going to get a lot. When they made the cuts in funding, we were actually the 3rd, not 2nd. We were behind Portland and then Brunswick. But if you compared us to the other districts that are similar to ours, such as R.S.U. 6, the Bonnie Eagle District, and R.S.U. 55, Shakopee Valley District, our cuts were significantly higher than theirs, and were very similar in district makeup. So there is some attempt from our level to try to find out why R.S.U. 57 is taking such huge cuts when other districts similar to ours are not being hit that hard. But in the process of it, in the meantime, we're still being forced to take those cuts. So while they're trying to, and we do encourage everyone to call their state representatives about the EPS funding, because we lose probably between $800 and $1 million a year just because we're aligned with Sanford. $800,000 and $1 million a year because we're aligned with Sanford instead of Biddeford. I know we've been trying for the past 3 years to open a dialogue with the state level, and they simply won't do it. So the more people from whom they hear, the more likely they are maybe to open that discussion and place us in the right economic district, because we're not in there now. What I can tell you is the Finance Committee is meeting every Wednesday night. The board meetings are on Wednesday nights as well, and so Finance, on the nights of the board meeting, they meet prior to the board meeting. They will mostly conduct their business, which they'll have to go over warrants. Tomorrow night, the Finance Committee will be handed a packet from the superintendent and the business manager of the preliminary budget, and they can begin the process of working from that and having a worksheet and really delving into it. You are correct in the fact that it's going to, this budget, even though it's showing an increase, is a big cut across the board. Probably, I could say that I'd feel safe in saying that areas such as bus drivers and food service workers, we can't go any lower. We can't cut bus drivers, or we're not going to be able to transport the students. We can't cut the food service workers any further than what we already have, or we can't sufficiently feed the students in the amount of time that we have. But that does not mean that the food service program and the transportation program will not experience cuts. There are certain employment factions that we can't go any lower on. But aside from that, they are looking at everything. They're looking at secretaries, they're looking at administrators, they're looking at teachers, they're looking at ed techs, they're looking at custodians, they're looking at everything. So there's very little that you can say we're not going to lose something somewhere. And it's going to be a tough year, and we don't expect this to be the last one. The projections are not good for the coming years as well. So they will meet tomorrow evening. We encourage everybody that can come to come, and especially the meeting next week, which will be the 17th, that will be a primary meeting for the Finance Committee to really begin working on the budget process and starting to ask questions and figure out the numbers and try to rework some of the things, request information back from the different areas that are providing the budget information for them. So anyone who is really interested in the process of this, I would say next week is probably a better week to attend than tomorrow night, but of course people are welcome to attend any of the Finance Committee meetings, and they're encouraged to try and understand the process. It's going to be an unfortunate and difficult time for everybody. I'll touch on each individual subcommittee of the board, and as much as I can, and that'll give you an overview of what's going on. That was the finance portion of it. And for curriculum, tomorrow evening, the board is being presented with the possibility of having trimesters at the high school rather than semesters. It's been proposed, the curriculum committee asked the current principal at the high school to take a look at the curriculum, and this was his response for it, is going to trimesters. The changes that will create at the high school will be, right now you have the potential of graduating with 32 credits if you took 8 credits every year and passed them. This will lower that to 30 credits. So it could impact electives for some of the students. And the way that it would work is if you were taking geometry, instead of taking geometry all year, you would take geometry part A in the first trimester and geometry part B in the second trimester, which would then in the third trimester on that same block open you up to either go on to your next level of math class or you could take an elective. Each trimester will equal a half a credit for the class. One of the reasons for doing this is because they're concerned about the number of kids that are failing classes. They fail the first half of the class, and then they feel like the kids just sit in there the second half of the class for the remainder of the year. They're not going to get a credit for the class because they failed it for the year. So what this will do is if a student is taking geometry part A in the first trimester and they fail it, it gives them the opportunity to take geometry part A in the second trimester and then take geometry part B in the third trimester and still gain that full credit for that class and not have wasted an entire year and not gained a credit for it. So I know that's one of the pros that Mr. Elkington, the principal at the high school, has presented as
Does
a
that
positive.
extend the school year?
It does not, no.
So it just breaks it into thirds and stuff?
Right. The way it is now, the students they meet 4 classes every day, and every other day it's the same 4 classes. So you've got green day and white day. The classes are approximately 73 minutes long right now. What it would do is they would go from 4 blocks a day to 5 blocks a day, and the class time would go down to 55 minutes. So they'd have the same class, the same teacher every day for, I believe it's approximately 59, 60 days, and then they'd move on to the next grouping. They feel that having the same teacher every day instead of alternating days with teachers gives kids more contact with an adult, gives them more contact with that teacher who's looking after them and keeping up on their work. For some kids, they feel that it's difficult to have that every other day process because they don't go home and do their homework that night and then they forget about it, and they don't do it the next night, and then they show up for the class on that third day, and none of their work is done. So they feel that for some kids that having the break in between creates a difficulty maintaining their classwork and studying for their tests. So that's another pro that they've presented.
Is the same amount of instructional minutes between the trimester in geometry and the semester with the geometry, is the same amount of instructional time?
Well, you'd be more apt to compare it to 2 trimesters of geometry, which would give you a whole year of geometry, to 2 semesters of geometry.
Right.
And it's actually more classroom time to go with the 2 trimesters than it
Okay.
is to go for a full year of geometry or any other class. Classes such as AP classes, advanced placement classes, would be 3 trimesters because some of those classes are a credit and a half anyhow, given the labs for AP Bio, and so, you know, and they're much more intensive class. So an AP class would go all 3 trimesters, things like music would go all 3 trimesters, band and chorus would go all 3 trimesters. So some classes would actually get more classroom time than what they're having now because they'd have a whole year of it, so it'd be significantly more, but every class will actually have more time in it than what's current.
How is that going to be impacted
Excuse me.
if you have a staff reduction that increases your class size? The students aren't going to then receive as much quality time with the instructor because there's more people vying for that time. You're going from 73 minutes to 55 with a larger class size.
One of the ways that they did that is it was requested by the principal through the curriculum committee. The state, and I think I had touched on this before when I was here before because it was in the process at the time, the state mandates that we must have 4 credits, 4 high school credits to graduate in language arts. Everything else they mandate as 2 credits. So 2 credits of math, 2 credits of science, 2 credits of social studies, and 4 credits of language arts. We had increased it several years ago to 4 credits of all of those 4 core curriculum classes. Their request was to decrease the increase. The increase was going to go into effect for the class of 2011. So the kids graduating this year wouldn't need that 4 credits, but the class of 2011 would. So one way to try and help with the potential of staff reduction was they reduced it from 4 credits required. We have to maintain the 4 credits in language arts because that's state mandated, but to reduce the 4 credits in math, science, and social studies to 3.5. So by breaking down with the trimesters to 1 trimester is 0.5 of a credit, they feel that by offering certain electives, the kids can maintain and obtain all of those credits, and we don't have to be, we can have a little more flexibility with the staff and be able to keep the class sizes at a reasonable rate, and if there is staff reduction, we can still maintain what needs to be done for the students.
And one of the things that Frank and the superintendent had touched on was that the figures show that R.S.U. 57 is, and you probably can't answer this, it'll be a rhetorical question, I guess, is the most fiscally responsible of the RSUs within the state. I mean, that's where the percentages came out in all the information that the school district provided us. So I guess the question that certainly the superintendent has is, if the school district is being fiscally responsible, why are they being penalized by such a huge reduction in, aid? And I'm asking that question because there are a lot of taxpayers out there who look at their tax bills and see the percentage of their tax payment that goes to fund education. And it's like, the school is just basically has a blank check. And I want to give you the opportunity to say that, maybe a large portion does go for education, but that money is being used effectively or wisely or prudently or however you want to describe it.
Well, and one reason that taxes are going up, because, in all honesty, I'm no fan of the current governor, but...
You're not alone.
But, he's maintaining that he's not raising taxes, and he's not raising taxes at a state level. The state is required by law to fund the schools at 55%. They're funding the schools at 45%. And so when the state's not funding at the level they're supposed to be funding at, they're not going to raise taxes at the state level, but it means we have to raise taxes at the local level just to maintain what's going on. R.S.U. 57, while I can't stand here and say to you we are the most fiscally responsible district in the state because I don't have access to those figures, and the superintendent and the business manager are better informed on that than I would be to be able to make that statement, I can say that we are excessively fiscally responsible, and we're looking at for every way possible to be able to raise funds. We've got constant grant writing going on for free money for the district to be able to continue to fund the programs. And at a certain point, we can only cut so far because, unfortunately, for the taxpayer, for the town, while, and it's a difficult thing for people to understand, while as board members we're elected by the voters of our town, once we are sworn in, we're no longer town representatives. We are employed by the state, and our job is to educate the students of our district and to provide the best education we possibly can. And so when we look at all of these decisions, moving to a trimester schedule and making a decrease in the amount of credits required for graduation, we do it with a fiscal eye. Everything is done with a fiscal eye. And, you know, it's hard to explain to people unless you sit in on the process of it, of how fiscally responsible we try to be. But when it comes down to the bottom line, we have to educate our students. We are doing a disservice to the students if we can't properly educate them. And our function as a school district, that's the only function we have, is to educate the students. And so, you know, we certainly are not decreasing what we offer at the high school. We're not lowering our standards for our teachers. We're not lowering our standards for our students. We're trying to look at, we're very data-driven, and we're trying to look at everything, all of the data that we have, all of the best practices, current best practices, the new and emerging practices, and trying to say, can we do this or better for less? And, you know, it's a difficult process to go through. I think, in essence, it's making us a stronger district, because we are really taking a hard look at what we offer, and we're asking everybody to do as good a job, if not better, and do it more economically. And so, John?
Excuse me, this is a bit of a jump in a different direction. Dropout rate, I'm wondering if they're measuring it by a different yardstick now than they did 7 or 8 years ago. Because 7 or 8 years ago, they were talking 4 or 5% dropout rate, and I kind of felt that we got our heads stuck in the sand there, that it's something greater than that. But I'm wondering now if we're talking 18% here, and you're talking 18% of a freshman class of 300 or so, you're talking 55, 60 kids not getting through high school. That's a load of kids. Now, I'm wondering, are they measuring it by if a youngster drops out and may be taking adult education classes, do they count that now as a dropout?
They're
where they
considered a
didn't
dropout.
before?
If they get their GED, they're considered a dropout.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I think before, if you had something going until you were 21, they didn't count you as a dropout, so therefore it looked like a much lower rate.
No, and anymore, if regular school is something that kids struggle with, or for economic reasons they have to get a job and they can't come to school during a normal school day, and they choose to go to adult ed to get their GED, they're considered a dropout
Okay.
by the state and federal government. And that is relatively recent that they've started looking at it like that.
Still very high. I mean, 18% is huge.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And that as well is another reason why they're looking at this trimester schedule, because they feel that by giving the kids an opportunity to regain that credit that they may have lost by failing a class, and what their intent is if you took the class the first trimester with teacher A, or we'll say teacher 1, and you took, geometry part A first trimester with teacher 1, and you failed it, you won't be assigned teacher 1 second trimester. You'll be assigned teacher 2, so that you're given a teacher that teaches the class a little differently and maybe can adjust to your learning style and you to their teaching style. So it is an attempt to make those kids successful. But yes, they are measuring the dropout rate significantly different than they did before. We do have, as an aside, we do have a dropout prevention committee in the district. It was formed about a year ago, I believe, and it has a student who dropped out of high school and went on to adult ed, and they're working towards their GED. We have a board member, we have administrators, we have other district representatives, and they're working to try and put together ways that we can help with lowering that dropout rate. And another program that they're looking at is the Reinventing Schools Coalition. It's called R.S.U. And it may be something that you guys have received information about, training for everyone to come, because it really is involving the community in getting together with supporting the kids, and so that's something that they're in the process of
Kind of
doing.
an alternative education model of some sort.
Similar, yeah.
Very
Yeah.
important.
So Lisa, there's 3 directors in town, right?
I'm sorry?
There's 3 directors in Waterboro.
Mm-hmm.
You're on your procedures and...
I'm on the policy committee.
Policy
And
committee.
the PR committee.
Right. So, and we have a representative on the finance committee, is that?
Mary
is that
Ross.
Mary Ross,
And she's also on negotiations.
okay. So you each sit on 2 committees?
Yes, we're required to sit on 2 committees.
Okay.
And then if there ad hoc committees that come out of policies that we create, then you have the opportunity to sit on something else as well. And the third representative is Heather Silva, and she's on transportation and curriculum.
Okay.
And, so that covers the curriculum of what's going on there. Transportation, one of the changes that'll be happening is we're going to be losing 3 buses. We know that already. We know that they're not going to be approved to remain roadworthy. We've been approved by the state for 2 buses. So we're going to have to purchase a 3rd bus. And they're also looking at going to vans, getting some vans for the district, because we do have some buses that are running, because of special education standards, they're running students to other areas, and they may only have a couple of students on one bus. It's not economical, and so they're looking at getting some vans.
Are you talking about purchasing additional vans?
The vans we have are no longer roadworthy.
No, you just purchased 2. 'Cause I talked with the superintendent about it. You got 2 vehicles, and his explanation was that what you essentially just said, that it's far more economical. But they've
It may be 2 additional to what he was saying. He told me that there would be 4 overall.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, we may have 2 now, and he's doing 2 additional. I don't know the
Yeah,
details of that,
He
but
had
that was...
informed us because there was some concern among some of the constituents in town that if the school budget was in such dire straits, why are they purchasing vehicles?
Mm-hmm.
So at one of our meetings, I asked that question, and the response I got was that these went out to bid in August of last year. That's when the packets were done, and they were just accepting delivery of the 2 vans and another vehicle that had a plow on it and a sander.
Yes.
And that one of the vehicles was apparently being used by the head of maintenance because he's on call 24/7.
Right, he goes to all 7 of
And
them.
that was the response I got from Frank. So this is so it's your understanding, and I won't put you on the spot, but it's your understanding right now on what you believe is that they're going to ask for 2 additional vans?
What he told me is that they were looking at 4 vans. So if he told you that we're getting 2, then my assumption would be it would be 2 more than, and possibly in the next fiscal cycle, where the ones now would have been in this current fiscal cycle. Because if it went out in August
Right.
and we're
Okay.
receiving it now, we're in the current fiscal cycle.
Right.
But I wouldn't hold me to that, so
Okay. No, I'm
it would
not-
be
I
best
won't
to raise
because-
that question with him. So, also, I know Transportation Department did look at going to propane. R.S.U. 6, Bonnie Eagle District, has some propane buses, and it's been a successful program there. However, there's a significant startup cost for that, and so that's been pulled back. They're no longer looking at that because we simply don't have the capital for the startup money for that and the switchover, and there's special tools that you have to have, and you've got to have the propane holding tanks, and so that's been pulled from being a discussion item under transportation. As far as policy goes, we're pretty much up to date on our policy manual. We're in the 3-year process for keeping those reviewed and revised. We do have a couple of policies that we're still working on, one which I've touched on earlier, which is the eligibility for participation in sports and extracurricular activities. And we'd had that in place, and it was, we set the kids to a higher standard. We went through 1 season of that. The kids did well with it, the parents did well with it. When the fall season rolled around, there were some kids who were ineligible to play in activities in the fall season, and it became an issue, and the board rescinded the policy. So we are looking at that again to hold the kids to standards higher than what the Maine Principals Association holds them. Because I go back to the fact that our primary function is to educate the students, and so we're looking at that policy. And also, one of the big things that we're doing is making sure that all of our policies are online, and that you can go to the district website, you can click on the policies and be able to read what our policy is for the district. It is not up to date completely at this point, but it is in the process, and hopefully I'm waiting for information back from the tech department as to when they'll have that up to date. But that's that's in the process of happening, so that anybody can go to our website and click on the policies that the district has. And those are the rules under which we operate as a school board. The PR committee is in the process of having all of the websites for all of the schools generalized, so that no matter what website you go to in the district, you've got, we're going to say the left-hand side is similar and the top is similar, and on the right-hand side is the ability for the schools to add their own links to things that they're doing individually. But we realized that it was very difficult for people to navigate the different websites of the schools, and even though, you know, I'm from Waterboro, we have to work as a district of all 6 of the towns, and people were becoming frustrated. Their child came up through an elementary school, they went to the middle school, that website was a lot different to navigate than the elementary website was. Then they went to the high school, and the high school's website was completely different than anybody's website, and people were becoming frustrated with the you know, ability to navigate it. So we're in the process of getting those all to be kind of cookie cutter with the ability to be slightly different on the side. And we're also looking for very creative ways in PR to be able to get out to the communities, the great things that our kids are doing, the great things that the schools are doing. We've got teachers that are winning grants and awards, and we want to get that out to the community so that they know that you know, we're trying to do great things in the school, and the kids are trying to do great things, and we're trying to find creative ways of getting that out there without having to spend a dime from the district. So that's a process that we're working on as well. Negotiations I can only touch on slightly. What was agreed upon earlier in the year, because of the curtailment with what was agreed upon with the teachers, was when we announced that we had to lay off teachers, and there were 6 positions that we were cutting, the agreement was that we would not work on their teacher's contract until we could work through the situation with the curtailment. It has been presented to the teachers that and this is public knowledge, the district was operating under what they had been told, which was that their funding for main care, the revenue for main care, was potentially going to be non-existent. That has not transpired, and the district has been reimbursed for some of their main care costs. They've also been told that they can anticipate continued reimbursement for that. The proposal was put forward that as long as we receive that amount from main care, the reimbursement from main care, by the 1st of June, that will cover the shortfall of those 6 teachers and what we would have been able to gain and cover in that curtailment cut of laying off those 6 teachers. If that is received, we'll hold off on letting go of those teachers because their last day was to be this Friday. We will rescind those layoffs, the teachers will remain in their positions, and if we receive that money by June 1st, everything is fine. If we do not receive that money by June 1st and we do not receive the amount that would have been covered by the layoffs of the teachers, everybody in the district, every employee of the district must give up 1 furlough day. All other groups had agreed to do that, with the exception of the teachers' union, and they had refused to do that. So they had voted against doing that. So I don't want to say they refused, but the vote was in the negative to give up a furlough day. My understanding is of another vote, once we presented this, another vote was taken last week, it was approved, and the board will act on it tomorrow evening. How the vote of the board goes, I cannot anticipate, but that is the vote that will be before the board, that is what will happen, and that we will not lay those teachers off, and they will keep their jobs, and if we get that money by June 1st, everything is fine, and if we don't, everybody will give up a furlough day. So I know a lot of parents, it didn't really affect anyone here in Waterboro, but it affected people in some of the other towns and classrooms in some of the other towns, and I know parents were very upset, and it was not our first choice to lay off anybody in the middle of the year. That's never our first choice. But by law, we cannot operate at a deficit. So unlike the state and the federal government, we cannot operate at a deficit, and we had to come up with something. It was a $766,000 curtailment, and the layoffs of the teachers covered about $91,000. And we cut from everywhere else, over $575,000 from other places. And the only remaining way that we could cut was the teachers. So that's never our first choice, but it was the only option we had left.
Now, that only satisfies this year.
That only satisfies
year.
this year. And at this point, because the budget is really not in its place, we don't know what the cuts will be for next year. But I think everybody is anticipating cuts unless other concessions are made. So I don't, even though it shows an increase, and it'll be an increase in taxes, it will be a decrease in the budget. And we can't.
Yeah, I mean, when all's said and done, you look at, no matter how you cut it and slice it, we're taking really a cut in the budget, and everybody looks at, well, how can you cut the budget and have a 16% increase to the municipalities? And that really, in my opinion, rests on the shoulders of the state. And, you know, the state is now given the taxpayers and the school boards and the districts the opportunity to devastate schools.
Exactly.
So,
You know, and I think from what the superintendent said too, I think after Wednesday night, the 1.5% is going to mean some reduction in staff, and that they'll actually have the staff, the positions will become public, I think, in another week, I think he said. If that 1.5% is...
Right. I don't know that I would say another week, because the Finance Committee really has to, they haven't sunk their teeth into what the proposal is going to be. So, you know, and there may be some preliminary estimates of who may lose their job, but that is all fluid until that budget turns from the superintendent's budget to the Finance Committee's budget, and then the Finance Committee turns it over to the board, and the board accepts it as their budget.
I think he was looking at it if, so that, from what I understand, he was meeting today with administrators, and they were looking at if this happens, then these are the positions that will go. And I think it's the intention, and I think people ought to know this, that when we're looking at this tax increase as it is, and if there's increased tax increase, this is what it actually means in positions. Not, these are the actual positions, not theoretical. We're going to miss 6 teachers or 25 teachers. Here are the actual positions that will be gone if this happens. I think that was the intent, to bring the reality out there that this is exactly what will happen.
But I would hesitate to say that that's going to become public knowledge and it's set in stone. And I would hesitate to encourage people to take that 100% to heart, become upset, start to advocate for a specific teacher, because it is all fluid. And the Finance Committee will hash this out from one side to the other. And there are things that the superintendent may present in his budget that the Finance Committee will come back and say, absolutely not. Or, you know, in either direction. The superintendent may say, this is what I'd like to see funded, and the Finance Committee may come back and go, no, you got to cut that. Or the superintendent may say, this is where I'm cutting it, and the Finance Committee may come back and say, no, we want you to keep that. And so the superintendent and business manager can present their budget to the Finance Committee, but then the Finance Committee runs it through the machine, and they look at every single line, and then they will create their own budget. Then they'll turn it over to the board, and they'll have to defend it to the board. And the board as a whole of all 18 members will sit down and say, possibly to the Finance Committee, you cut this, we want it put back. A majority of the board wants. So, you know, people are very passionate about their teachers, about their children's teachers. And I understand that. So I'd hesitate to say that when people's names start coming out or positions start coming out, that's the be-all and end-all. It's not necessarily, and things could get put back and things could get moved around, and because I saw that happen repeatedly last year, of things that were initially cut and they were put back in, and things that were initially there and it was cut out, and knowing people's reaction to the fact that we were laying off 6 teachers this year, and the response that the board got from that, people are very passionate about it, and I don't deny them that, and I don't begrudge them that. They have every right to be passionate about their teachers. But I also don't want to create panic in the streets either. When things are put out, it's still in estimate phase, and it's still very fluid. So while some of those numbers may come out and some of those specific teachers or positions may come out that they're being said that they're cut, that isn't necessarily the end of the issue. But I can say with 100% certainty, people are going to be cut. So unless there are some serious concessions made.
Ultimately, the finance committee makes the budget cut, but ultimately the superintendent determines the positions. The finance committee or the board doesn't determine positions. It's the superintendent that does that. So you can say, I will put money into this program, but the positions are responsible to the superintendent.
The superintendent is the one who who gives the announcement to the employees. It's the board's budget to maintain. And if the board comes back and says, we feel we can no longer support this program, and the superintendent wanted to support it, but it was the majority of the board who felt that a program could no longer be supported, then that would cut that person's position or a number of people's positions. So the superintendent ultimately is responsible for relaying the information and making the final determination of who gets cut.
Yeah.
But the board itself and the finance committee in the interim, as it goes through the process, can make changes to the superintendent's requests, and they can remove a program that's in place that the superintendent had not intended to cut, and they can keep a program that the superintendent had intended to cut.
Bottom line, there will be positions that leave, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately, with an increase of this magnitude in the taxes, it now pits those that are trying to protect the schools and teachers and whatnot. I mean, I'm talking members of the community that are trying to say, I want to keep my child's teacher, or the amount of teachers in elementary school, whatever the case may be. It kind of creates this, battleground now. Well, wait a minute, the tax increases is significantly, way above what's normal, usual, and customary, right? So again, it goes back to, the Department of Education, in my opinion, and the governor by this whole process that we determined, EPS funding from, and everything else, to say that it's now we're going to create this war zone, and I don't mean to kind of get sensational about it, but we're going to create this war zone of, we can't afford that many taxes, we can't afford to cut teachers, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's going to be a big vote. I think it's going to, as it comes down, it will get more and more public that this is your tax increase, and here's your teachers.
Yep.
And there's going to be those, you're going to have your parents and your teachers and the pro-education at all costs people, and then your people say, we can't afford it, and they're going to vote.
And somewhere in the middle.
And with equal passion on both sides when you're
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, and it's hard to explain to people why your taxes are going up and we're still cutting teachers.
That's right, that's right. It's
But
exact-
the
that's a-
explanation is the state.
And that is a fact.
so,
I mean, that's,
yeah.
depends on how, in that scale that I know superintendent has handed out several times, that goes from, an increase in budgeting where you're going to lose teachers, or positions, I shouldn't say teachers, to a significant reduction to a point where, you maintain just not even the status quo, but you reduce the budget to a point where you don't lose state and/or federal funding, which is, I think was 7
7%, yeah, which
7%.
is how we
to the towns.
took that stance
So-
along with the 4 other towns.
Yeah.
And I've
And that
heard
is-
comments
that
from
is
people already, that,
significant.
what are you guys, nuts?
Yeah.
You know, to support 7%? But if we don't support at least that bottom threshold, then all the state and federal funding goes away, so the financial hole is, it's now
even deeper.
become a crater.
Yeah.
And you're going to dismantle the school system.
Yeah, so, I mean, we do have to, and I go back to what I said earlier, we have a responsibility to educate the students, and there is a bare minimum, and we realize, people are going to lose their jobs, and that's one of the more difficult jobs of a school board member, is to know that what you're doing is going to cause somebody to lose their job. But we also know that, we'd like to be, we're trying very hard to be fiscally responsible, but at a certain point, we're shooting ourselves in the foot if we go too far below, because we do lose the state and federal funding, and then we're not properly educating the kids. And what is that? What are we doing on that for the community if we're not educating the kids? So because of dealing with the curtailment issue and putting that forward to the unions, we had agreed with the teachers' union that we would not begin negotiations on their contract and until we got this all worked out. Now that this appears, should it pass tomorrow evening, that is worked out, we're waiting to hear from the teachers' union on a date to begin negotiation on their contract. I can tell you that it is public knowledge that the negotiation with the ed techs has gone to mediation. So, and that is something that we don't set a timeline on. A mediator will have to be assigned to this, and it will go by their timeline.
Yep.
So that has gone to mediation.
Something I think that the school board, and they probably are already aware of it, but I think it bears mentioning again, is that some of the people that, in the community, that are hearing that some school teachers might lose their jobs, perhaps aren't going to be as sympathetic as, other people who have students within the school system, because there's a lot of people in the community that have lost their jobs. They've been unemployed for, quite a period of time. They've either been on unemployment, or their unemployment's run out and they're having difficulties. And so when you talk responsibility, we're caught on that fence as well. It's, that, we want to be responsible as a board to see that everyone gets a good quality education, and at the same time, we have a responsibility to the taxpayers of this community to try to keep it as low as we possibly can.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. Nobody's in a good position at
Nope.
this
No.
point. Nobody is. So it's a difficult time for everybody in any kind of a municipal position. So I know that you said that the superintendent was meeting with the administrators today, and he did do that. He meets with them again all day tomorrow, and he meets with them again all day next Wednesday. And so through that process, they will then next Wednesday night, when they go before the when the superintendent goes before the finance committee, at that point, it will have been as hashed out as it possibly can be at that point about where they're looking at cuts. And, but again, the finance committee can make changes to that, so should they choose to do so.
Okay.
I think that pretty much covers it for me. If you have anything
Well,
else.
Did you expect an hour?
Yeah,
I didn't, no. But that's why I'm here, so.
right now it is the prime time, right? So,
And I know that at the meeting last night, some of the other towns have made the request or suggestion that the selectmen from the towns and the full board at some point in the future have opportunities to be together, all in the same room at the same time. And so I know the superintendent talked about that a little bit today, and that'll be something that we'll be keeping in the back of our mind. And obviously, I think now is a difficult time to try and pull that all together with the budget process. But it's something that he's aware of and is going to be trying to see if at some point we can do that and have everybody together and just keep a dialogue going between the the selectmen and the school board members at all times, so.
Yeah, well, you're in charge of public relations. This is probably a good time to direct this towards you. Waterboro is extremely fortunate that we certainly have you here to come in. But I know that sentiments expressed by some of the other board members of select persons in other towns was that they've asked their members, their board members to, come in and do presentations much like you did tonight, and they haven't done so. So they're a little disillusioned on that side. We feel fortunate, and it was duly noted at the meeting that Waterboro, that we have school board members show up, but that is not the case across the board. So maybe that's something that you in your position can sort of redirect so that maybe you can,
Well, we have
keep these-
a PR committee meeting this Thursday evening, so I'll bring that up to the chair of that committee, and I know that the superintendent touched on that today when I met with him, and so that can be something that I can discuss with the board chair, and she can make mention at a board meeting as well, hopefully. So, because I know it's been helpful to me to come here, and I do think it helps in the long run. I know because we don't televise our meetings anymore, but you guys televise yours, this is an opportunity also for me to reach people in the community and let them know that, their school board members' names and phone numbers are on the website for the district, and they can call their school board members and talk to them and express concerns about things and let them know where they stand on issues. It may not necessarily sway a vote one way or the other, but it's helpful to know how people stand. And, most normally all we ever hear from is when people are mad at us. So if people have anything they want to tell us that's either it's really positive about the district, or even if it is negative, that's why our phone numbers are listed on the website, so.
It's appreciated because it really reduces the us and them, that school down there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really is.
Well,
You
and
realize that we're really kind of rowing the same boat.
We're fully aware of the fact that when it comes to taxes, we take the biggest slice of the pie, as far as the school district goes in the education budget. And we'd like to think that everybody remembers that the education of students benefits the community as a whole, because if you've got your kids in school, they're not out doing things that they ought not to be doing in the community. So and when you educate a student, they get a job, and they pay taxes, and they become responsible citizens. And when you don't educate a student, they become more of a tax drain, because then they potentially become part of the system, and in a negative way. So, educating the students is important, and we know that we take a huge portion of the taxes to do that. But we are trying very hard to do it as best we can for the least amount of money. And we do think that our kids at M.R.S.A get a good education. We're getting kids this year that are being accepted to Ivy League schools, and I think that says a lot about our teachers, it says a lot about our kids, and it says a lot about the dedication of the district as a whole. And we do have kids that are getting some great honors, some teachers that are getting national recognition, and I think that we're doing a really good job, but we're doing it under stressful times, just like you guys are. And so, as much as I can communicate that to you, and you can communicate what you guys are looking at back to me, then I think that benefits everybody.
Good.
So if there's nothing else, no?
Thank you. Liz.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Let me know when my turn rolls around.
Yeah.
The whole debate comes off the fact that all of our funding and all of our cuts is based in formulas that depend on what city or town we're related with. In this case, it's Sanford. And this is not the first time that this comes up every 3 or 4 years. So who determines who we get related to? Why do we have to be with Sanford for the market? Why can't we benefit of Portland? Where is the decision made?
It's made at the state level, and who specifically makes it, I don't have that answer, but I could probably find out for you.
It comes up
I
every
think,
3 or 4
I
years.
think Frank
Board of
has got an audience, right, with the board, I think, to express the concerns. At least that's what
This has been ongoing I've been on the board, I'm finishing up my 5th year, and this has been ongoing for at least 4 years.
Well, this is
of-
back in the 90s, we went,
You
yeah,
know,
same,
and
same thing back
I
then.
know that far back, it was estimated that we lost $880,000 one year.
And
because
I
we
can
were
understand why
aligned.
no one would try to join a town that's gonna cost you more money.
Oh,
In
yeah, the
this case,
state's not
Sanford,
gonna be
and
jumping
everybody's
on that
gonna want the
bandwagon.
less, but
Yeah.
there's gotta be some justification or formula in there.
No, I
that-
think the justification is a manipulation in favor of how it gets spread.
And I think there may be it's kind of the attitude of we've always done it that way. I
Yeah, oh,
think
yeah.
a long time ago, we were aligned with Sanford because of the mills.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people that lived here did work in Sanford. But that has shifted once the mills were no longer a huge employer.
They
And
went out in 1955.
Yeah, but
But
I mean.
why make a
but
change?
Yeah.
You know, good heavens,
there
why
was-
change
there was-
anything? So,
There's a history too of, you know, of students from this whole district basically being educated in the Sanford high schools.
well, and our VOC program goes to Sanford. And they don't go to Bedford, they go to Sanford for VOTEC. And so, you know, I think
Well, you did.
that there are, I'm sure they could provide you with a myriad of reasons why they do it that way, and we could provide them with a myriad of reasons
I
why
wanna
they
see,
should.
I wanna see some factual formula
Yeah.
why, and not just because, you know, is it Joe Wagner on this one? Is he?
Yes.
you get-
Yes.
is he-
He's on this.
He's working, he's working on it.
Yeah.
He is on this. I'll give him credit. He has been working
And
this
that,
hard.
you know, if we could get that realigned, is not going to fix all of our problems, but it sure would help a little bit. So, and you know, the disparity between the cuts that were made,
Did Sanford take as big a cut?
we took a bigger cut than Sanford did.
Yep.
Portland took the largest cut, Brunswick took second, and we took third.
Well, I think we're in second now, according to after this.
Well, maybe once things have been replaced. I know
Yeah.
Portland lost something like 3.3 million, and they got 1.3 million back. And,
Right.
you know, we got
Lost
200,000.
2.2, we got 200,000 back.
Yeah.
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 So I know that they're trying to figure out what formula are you using for this, because it's ridiculous.
Well, it's
But nobody wants to answer that
Definitely
question.
fuzzy math.
Yeah,
Well, that was
yeah.
all, that was back in the 90s, same thing, nobody had to formulate it, it was
Yeah.
all some magic room somewhere that
Yeah,
figured these things
yeah, the
out.
magic 8 ball where you shake it and it gives you this horrible number, so. But yeah, if you contact Joe, you could probably bend his ear a little bit, because I do know that
Joe
he's.
has expressed that, and he's very, very frustrated as well with not being able to get an answer. Or he gets an answer, but I think it's,
He's not happy with the
yeah.
answer.
State's not eager to pay us another $850,000 either. So, I mean, it's up to the state as a
that has to
whole would
come-
love to keep us in with Sanford, so it
Gotta
doesn't
come from
cost them.
it's gotta come from somewhere else if it
Well,
doesn't.
I think the truth be known, they've never hit that 55%
They never did,
mark
no.
since the law was in effect.
No, and it's down to 45 now. So I think the closest they got was maybe 50, but they never hit the 55
And
mark.
as they would say, we're